All right, guys, today I've got Jordan from The Draw on. He's a guest I've had on before, and he's the guy to talk to on the New Mexico Draw. We talk about every species there is out there. We talk about elk, Aoudad, Oryx, all that good stuff, some draw tactics, some strategies. We talk about some units. So, without further ado, let's dive right into it. Jordan, awesome to have you, man. We're going to talk a ton about New Mexico Draw and all of that, but I've got to ask the question that I've been asking everybody as a warm up. Bucket list hunt, man. What is it for you?
I like it. First of all, thank you for having me. I know me and you kind of touched on it, and this was a little bit quick and last minute, so I appreciate you having us on. Um, Bucket list hunt for me. So this one might be unique. Like I've said this one for a while, like long enough that it's embarrassing that I haven't done it yet. Maybe. So mine is like Eastern Europe, and even in a way, I don't even know if the hunt that I want to do, because of time frames of the year and all of that, exists particularly. But I would love to do Eastern Europe, and I want to go hunting for roe deer. I would like to go hunting for boar, and I would really love to shoot an Eastern red stag. But I would kind of hate to go all the way over there and not get to do a day or two of driven hunts, right?
Oh, okay.
And so the idea behind it is like in human history, that part of the world was kind of the first part of the world that hunting kind of transitioned into a sport. You had the kings and the lords and all of that stuff that were out hunting for the first time in humanity because they loved it. And then
Sure.
you even hear and you see some stuff that a lot of people don't quite pick up on, or if you haven't thought about it a ton like myself, like we're all familiar with like the Robin Hood story, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things in Robin Hood is that Sherwood Forest is haunted, right? So Sherwood Forest is the reason it's haunted, partly to do with socialism, and if you can control the food supply you can control the people, but the other part of it is that those kings and lords and those higher, that higher civilization of people, they loved hunting and they did not want competition out there. They didn't want the
Sure.
people out there messing with their stuff. And so between that and then the idea of, I've never hunted red stag, period, but that's my dream place to do it, because that stag in those places, like, I mean, they were shipping those around the world in wooden boats because people loved to hunt that deer so much
Yeah.
that they were willing to do crazy things at a time of in history that, like, it's absurd that they did it, really. And
Right.
so to go where all of that originated, is, to me, seems like extremely nostalgic. Like that. So that's my number one.
Dude, that's a good answer, man. We could do a whole podcast just on that, dude. But we got to talk about New Mexico stuff. But I do want to talk about it a little bit more because I love the answer, man, and I think there's a lot to unpack there, Jordan. Because to me, well, one thing, like you mentioned, the driven hunt part of it, it's interesting to me that that's one of the appeals because there's a lot of hunters, man, that I think, particularly in the U.S., they get stuck on our style of hunting,
Yeah,
and I think it's really unfortunate, man, because every time I go do some like out of the box type of hunting, I always, before I do it, I think, it's probably not as cool as the hunting that I'm doing. But then when I
sure.
do it, when I do it, I'm like, oh yeah, these guys got like a new adventure figured out.
For sure. And I think that, like, if for it to be uh what I want, I think part of it is like how much culture they, like, from
Sure.
the word go. I mean, clear from like the potentially the trumpet blasting to, the style of clothes that they wear, to like the camaraderie after the fact and the dinner, and like the animals' heads like on the table, and like there's just so much that I mean, we're talking like another 100 or 200 years of like tradition built into what's going, like what goes into a proper Eastern Europe hunt and all
Right.
of that, which is like, again, like that has been such a driving force in my life to go where all of it started is,
Sure.
yeah, super. That
No,
that's
that
my number one.
yeah, that'd be a cool one, man. And the other part of it that you mentioned too is or you touched on there, is just like these guys have been moving around animals to different locations on this earth for a long time, man.
Yeah, like isn't it crazy?
And
Like again, wooden boats full of
yeah,
deer headed
yeah,
to South America, New Zealand, Australia. You know, almost like oddly enough, like only North America is the only place. I mean, obviously later they did, but
right,
like during that time, and I don't know if it was because there was enough game already here, whereas places like Australia and New Zealand and such didn't have anything, or even South America particularly didn't have as much, or really. And so there were the governors and the lords and stuff that came from Europe, had plenty to do anyways, so they never really requested it. But considering where they took them everywhere else, it's so bizarre. Or many other I guess they never did also take them to like Eastern British or German, East Africa, or any of those You know, they didn't end up
right.
down there either. Maybe it was because there just was stuff to hunt, but on wooden boats
Yeah,
in wild oceans they brought these things across, and it's
yeah,
because
yeah.
they loved it so much.
Well, dude, I think I think there's probably this bias that exists because it's not like it's not in the history we all learn. Like we're talking about times where there's all this turmoil, right? Like they're just trying to explore oceans. There's all, there's
Yeah,
imperialism going on, there's slavery going on, there's all these like major things going on Earth as people figure this out. But in all of that chaos, there was guys just like me and you. They were just trying to figure out really good hunting spots or
I think
making
so
good
too.
hunting spots.
Yeah,
Like literally,
yeah,
there's all this crazy shit going on Earth, and there's some guys that live their whole life, and their business was to go, go catch red stags in Europe and take them to
yes,
New Zealand,
yeah. So
or
that's
you
another
know.
interesting angle. Like it's one thing to get them in the ship, or for them to be in the ship. It's another thing of like, how did they get them in the
Yeah, I
ship?
know. Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah.
how did, like, that was a whole process, and then how do you get them from wherever you did get them to the ship? And like we're talking horse-drawn wooden carriages full of deer. That, I mean,
Yeah,
everything
well,
about, and
it was somebody's
there's
life.
no sedative. There's not nothing
No,
like.
yeah, yeah.
And
There, it
how,
was
and then what was the mortality rate, right? So
right,
you load 30 of them up on a boat and like six make it,
right.
or I mean, who knows?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Who knows? Well, and the thing is like there had to been a group of guys back in the day that this was their life's work, man. And
right. That's it.
nobody knows who they are.
No, 100%. It's lost in history
Yeah,
because, yeah, and if you got good at it, similar to anyone that was a master at lots of trade work, be it art or other things, like you weren't isolated to your one spot. You ended up kind of traveling Europe
oh
because
sure.
where the money was, the kings, the lords, the church, all of these things were bringing you, that they were requesting your services. And so like you could be gathering deer in one part of the continent one week,
Yeah,
and 2 weeks later you're gathering deer for somebody else in another, because that's who you were. Like
right.
that, you built the reputation that me and my guys know how to do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, for sure. I mean, it's dude. There's a lot there that's it kind of cracks me up, man. Even you think about it, like these guys have such bigger issues to deal with, and they show up in Hawaii, and some guy was like, dude. I love your, like, he's talking to the natives there, whoever's control, like, I love your island, but you guys got to get some shit to hunt. Cliff's Hunter, I created this knife from iteration in the field. It has been modified and perfected for the backcountry use case. It is my belief that in terms of all around knives, this is the last knife that an elk hunter, mule deer hunter, sheep hunter, goat hunter will need to buy. Go check it out on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. In the top right, click shop, then Cliff's Hunter. All the details are there.
Dude,
Yeah,
seriously.
you know what I mean?
Like, yeah, it's 100%. Like, those conversations happened. And
Yeah,
again, they could have come from, like, Hawaii's an example of, like, that could have came from, I don't know when the access deer, the mouflons and stuff ended up down there exactly. I'm not familiar with that, but there's a chance that it happened, like, even in a way of sustainability, like, we if we have to, and so it could have even been a political thing, right? Originally, I believe that there was probably some of that. New Zealand would be another example of, like, how does a population of people, like, completely survive just off of fish and things of that nature that the ocean is providing, the carrying capacity for what people in these islands and things like that
sure.
is only x amount if you're completely reliant on the ocean and the currents and all of that. But if you've got the crops and then you have some sort of big game animal, then your carrying capacity, the island's carrying capacity is better and gives a chance for more. So yeah, you're right. We could go way down
Oh
tons
yeah,
of rabbit
yeah,
holes
yeah,
on
yeah. No,
all
but
of that.
I
Like,
mean, yeah, there's probably tons of different origination stories, but I to this day I notice it. It's crazy, Jordan. Like in the Caribbean, man, people don't realize that there's a well, and I know again we could talk about it forever, but there are a lot of islands on Earth that the exotics on them are not well publicized. Like
sure.
people don't actually know about them, but they exist, and they're pretty much like I've been to some pretty desolate islands that have feral goats on them, and it's like how. I mean, I'm talking about stuff that has no human population hasn't had it, and
Right,
it's like
right.
somebody dumped them there, and
Or,
like
yeah, a shipwreck and they swam there. I mean, right? Like,
yeah,
there's all sorts of scenarios. Yeah.
yeah, dude, one time in particular, I'm not gonna mention the island, but I got on a small island and I was with my brother and we started to notice deer crap, and I knew it was deer poop. There's like no doubt in my
Sure.
mind, right?
Yeah.
Like, in I was with another guy and he's like, maybe it's rabbit. I'm like, no, this is deer poop. And on that island, and this is in the Caribbean, they have white-tailed deer. We
Oh
found
wow.
white-tailed deer, and it's like somebody put them there. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
and in my mind, like, there's a lot there that's wild to me. Like, one, like how crazy adaptable that species is.
Oh yeah,
It
man.
can live in that climate and it can live in Alberta. Like,
Right.
that's pretty wild. But I since kind of have heard the origination story of them because I kind of dug into it, and it was military guys brought them down there and put them on this island to hunt.
Similar
But
to
yeah,
the
same.
British bringing the stags, right? It was the
Yeah,
military. Like, that's who was out there, out and about. Is
yeah, it's wild.
I'm like, if you're gonna make me sit here forever, at least give me something to do.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
if I have to
it,
be here, then I still want to do that.
yeah. I mean, people have been wanting to hunt forever. That's just the
Yeah.
reality of it. But
Yeah, no, there for sure.
nah,
It's built into you.
I I,
It's
lo- I love it, man. On that note, let's dive into New Mexico
sure. Yep.
on the exotic end first. Um,
Cool.
is that
Yep.
cool?
Yeah, easy. Perfect. So, um the ibex, right? Like, unfortunately, the that's not much to talk about. Really, not much change. The state continues to issue similar number of tags, as they always did. They're, 2 years ago, they finally kind of took a step back, but overall, they're still issuing a similar number of tags. And from the looks of it, it's really not having much of a positive impact on overall population. It's still very, very down. The general consensus is there's less than 200 goats on the mountain right now, and then the age class. The success rates on even the once in a lifetime hunt, I want to say, was like, I'm I hate throwing exacts on podcasts because I'm going to get somebody tell me I'm dead wrong. It was very low. The success rate, even on the rifle once in a lifetime hunt, was very low. And then the average billies are in that low 30s. There was one or two decent billies, and that's kind of that's the hard part is you see a decent billy or two, and then it gets blown up on social media, and it doesn't paint the right picture. It's not back. I can tell you as an entity, that applies a lot of people. We are very, very limited. If I mean, we are trying as hard as we can to talk people out of applying for ibex, so we're submitting very, very few of those, because I don't think I like that would not be a positive phone call to call someone and just tell them they just drew a $1,600 tag, and then all of what's probably going to go into that for that hunt. Currently it's a train wreck up there.
Yeah.
So
What's is there any we can keep it brief, Jordan, but is there any hope, for him, man? Is there any plan to bring him back at all, or no?
unfortunately, it sure doesn't look like it.
Okay.
Like the state would need to get ultra aggressive with the lions that became very overpopulated on that patch of dirt, because there was such a huge food source for the ibex, and so that would need to be addressed. I think the population is so low currently that the eagles even probably are worth mentioning, as far as that they're definitely worth factoring in to overall mortality rates. And then just the hunting, like they just won't. If it was going to have a chance, it could possibly get there, but it would need 5 years of just heavy predator control and no hunting. And I think
Yeah.
we could turn it back around, but the state for some reason just doesn't seem interested. And I don't know if somewhere in there's an alternate agenda, or something like that, but they sure don't seem to be taking aggressive actions towards
Sure.
turning it back into the right path.
Yeah, that's too bad, man. And I have no idea like what the rules are on all that stuff, but I at one point I had some buddies that own a big ranch in Texas, and it has a bunch of caprock structure on it, and
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to talk them into to letting some out or something. I don't know
Sure.
the rules,
And
but I was like, it'd be a cool opportunity.
and that's what I mean. Even like my partner Jason here, he asked me the other day, um, about something to do with ibex, and it was almost like you better go get one now if you're ever going to get one. And there is that train of thought. The flip side of that, and what I told him, and this is obviously just a super personal opinion, but like I feel like I got to do everything I ever dreamed of on that rock. I took kids, and I took muzzleloader and rifle guys, and I
Yeah,
I guided governor's tags up there. I spent weeks on that rock, and I kind of like checked almost every box I ever had. Maybe the only one was I never did get to walk up to a 50-inch billy. Um, and they did exist when I first started hunting it. There was guys still shooting billies like that. That would maybe be the only box I never checked. But I told him, like, for me personally, I don't want a 32 incher in my house. It would be frustrating. Like that's
yeah,
not a mature ibex. Like I'm content with my pictures and my memories, and I would rather not shoot one than shoot one that small. But that also comes from somebody who did spend a ton of time on the mountain, and walked up to a lot of billies, and it was great. If you've never done it before, I mean, like Jason said, maybe there is something to be said about like better do it now,
for
or
sure.
try, because it could truly just be gone altogether at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, but I get what you're saying, Jordan. I think it goes beyond like a trophy hunting thought process. And I think
Yeah, it's not. It's
a lot of
not. There's
people,
more
it,
respect. I have a ton of respect for the species. I think, and what they are, and just having a juvenile as
yeah,
mine. I'm okay not shooting one,
yeah,
because it's not even a trophy thing. Is more of just the respect. I would shoot a big double broke horn just to get one of those
sure,
old big heavy shouldered billies and all of that. over a 3-year-old juvenile.
Yeah, I think it comes down to like a reflection on like the overall population dynamic because I would run into that in some units in Colorado when I was guiding bighorn hunts, and I would
Yeah,
like I would open up the book because they never gave me like inside information or anything on like what was coming out on quotas, and it would be like a unit where I literally knew every sheep in there, Jordan. Like there would be 50 sheep in there, like ewes,
sure,
lambs, and rams. I knew all of them. And like,
right,
I had names for them. And I'd open up the book and it'd be two ram tags in whatever, 2016. And in my mind, I'm thinking the biggest ram in there is a half curl ram. Like
right.
he's 3.5 years old. And it's not about me judging somebody for shooting a 3.5 year old
Yeah,
bighorn,
no,
even though I think everybody would be like, they'd see it and it doesn't look like a mature ram, right?
right,
But
right.
having said that, it's not about the trophy. It's about that you're hunting a population that doesn't need to be hunted.
Yeah, that doesn't
You
need
know
to
what
be
I
hunted.
mean?
Correct.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah, like they're as stewards of the animals and lands and everything. I think you're like, nah, it's not ready. Like
right,
it could be, can be, but if you're going to continue to over harvest in the state and all of that, you're just like, man, why?
right.
And I think for a lot of folks, that the unfortunate reality is, I still think there's a lot of folks, even in New Mexico, who do apply. Um, and it's not like us, that it's just what this is what we live and breathe. They're just they hunt when they draw tags and things of that nature, and it's like a super discouraging. You draw a tag with a once in a lifetime status on it. I think somehow, like across the board, people expect and probably should expect to have a chance at a mature animal if the tag has a once in a lifetime status associated with it. There's plenty of other hunting opportunities, but if you have a tag that's got a once in a lifetime status
Right.
attached to it, there ought to be a chance at a mature animal, and not necessarily even saying a giant, just a mature
Sure.
representation.
Yeah, and I think that's like a reasonable assumption, like you
Right.
say, Jordan. I mean, I've always felt that way, in sheep, goat, moose hunts in other states,
Sure.
so it makes
Yep.
sense. Let's talk Aoudad, dude, because I think
Aoudad.
it's a little more
So
positive, right?
yeah, my personal favorite. If they told me I could only hunt one animal the rest of my life, I think that's the one I would pick. I'm a sucker for those sheep. That being said, I will say, the state of New Mexico. So it's really interesting. Like the state of New Mexico does not do official counts for the Aoudad. Everything to do with the management agenda on the Aoudad in New Mexico is based off of hunter satisfaction. And so at the very end of your harvest report that you're required to fill out every year, they give you a 1 through 5 rating on how did you like the hunt? 1 being horrible, 5 being the best hunt of your life. And that's how they're managing the Aoudad population right now, and have for a long time. And so what happened is, about 2 years ago, they about doubled the number of Aoudad tags that they were issuing in the state, because hunter satisfaction was through the roof. And it was 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I would have put some of those places in New Mexico, particularly during October, against any private ranch I've ever seen in Texas. Like it, public land or not, like it was
Yeah,
unbelievable.
good
Tons
hunting.
of sheep, very high age class. It just seemed like so many guys were killing these absolute bombers. Um, then they increased the tags. Then they uh, decided that all of Unit 34 was now considered in the over-the-counter year-round area, and the cause and effect's been pretty crazy. Like the region of units that you kind of need to have your map in your hand and watch where you're going is like now Unit 32, 36, and 37. um, I spent some time during the rut in there this last year, and struggled like I remember struggling like that back when all of Aoudad was over the counter in New
I gotcha.
Mexico. um, even finding groups of sheep right in the middle of the rut without rams in them. And then oddly enough, in some areas of those units, the elk have really moved out into the desert there. Like we're talking 9 and 10 miles from a tree. They're
Huh.
just out in the desert, where the Aoudad used to be, and it does seem like it's shifted those sheep as well. The elk have shifted those sheep, and so I would caution anyone who happens to be catching this. Like if you are interested in New Mexico Aoudad, I would strongly encourage you to look more at that unit 29 and 30 right now, than the other region 32, 36, 37. That was a very, I mean, I put on like, me and my buddy, it was like 26, 27 miles in 2.5 days of hunting, and saw very few sheep and no rams whatsoever right during the rut. Every ewe should have had a
Yeah.
ram with it, and 3 years ago there was. 29 and 30, to be totally honest, I don't think it's quite hunting what it was a few years ago. It makes sense. They doubled the number of tags they're issuing, like almost, I want to say like 800, 900 tags a year now in those regions. um, it's having a cause and effect, but there's so much public land, there's so many sheep. I still think really about any time you go into unit 29 and 30, like you've got a chance to shoot a solid ram. It may just not be quite as turnkey as it was a couple of years ago.
Right.
You've got to be prepared. Like for us that hunt them a lot, um, a very normal day out there is 8 to 10 miles on your boots, just poking and prodding around, and almost expecting to have a day where you do that and just don't turn up any sheep. But the
Right.
guys that are relentless and they'll go give it 4 or 5 days and hunt like that and cover big ground and glass and all of that, they're still killing sheep and killing good rams. It's just, it's 4 years ago you could drive down the road in some of those places and shoot a big ram. I do think that that pressure that's from October all the way through February now, you got to earn them a little bit more like you used to in the past, but it's still a good hunt. And it's that 29 and 30 is great because it's just endless miles of public land. I mean, there is
Right.
private here and there, but you can really get out and go and cover ground and not be worried. Whereas in 32, 36, 37, you better be staring
Got
at
to
a
be paying
map.
attention.
Yeah, very
Jordan,
closely.
when is the rut? When's the rut for in
About
New
middle of
Mexico?
October.
Okay.
Yep. About,
Yeah.
I mean, 1st of October through the middle of October. That's when they're cranked up the most. I mean, the I've always said, and a lot of the guys that I've hunted, like that I've hunted them a lot. There is a bit of a secondary rut, oddly enough, about late February. It seems like you'll see those rams cruising once again for a minute, and I don't know where that stems from exactly, but they sure are definitely getting a little bit ruddy on the back end of February again for a moment. It
Yeah.
seems like there's another kind of wave of it right then.
That kind of makes sense from what I've seen. I've scouted and looked at scouted ranches from like a leasing perspective from
Sure.
from a helicopter in Texas quite a
Yep.
bit just to see like what the population was. And I one observation I always noticed is that your lambs from lambs to yearlings, there's some pretty significant variation in size, which indicates to me that there might be
There's two. Yep.
two
Yep.
times that they
Correct.
actually get bred. Pretty, I mean, really interesting animals. And just to break down the units a little bit so I understand, all the units you just mentioned, Jordan, those are for a non-resident. Those are fairly hard draws, correctly?
They have
Correct.
become, yeah,
Yep.
they have become that. I anticipate because of how rough like the 32, 36, 37 has gotten, that those are like, especially like in the guided pool and stuff, the guys that are out there year in and year out are like, I'm not hunting that. So I
Yeah.
think you're going to see the odds in the guided pool in those units getting considerably better. But unfortunately, there's a reason for that. It's because the guys that
It's tough.
are hunting them manually, you're like, I'm not, I don't want to take anybody in there. And so the
Yep.
guy, and now not to say that there isn't some private ranches and stuff that I know are good. I mean, there's two or three of them that, like, I don't care if the state issued 10,000 Aoudad tags, they would still, they're big properties,
Yeah.
and I guarantee they hunt very well. And who knows, they could even have more sheep now. The pressure has just
Yeah,
kind
it's
of
pushed them on. Sure.
pushed them and relocated them. But the yeah, the 29 and 30, still rocking and rolling. And then that's really it. Like, there's well, the
Are
third
there
one,
are there some easy draws, Jordan, for non-residents or
no,
no?
not really anymore.
Okay.
I would say that, like, the last year or two, they have like a hunt, I want to say like a week before Christmas, that seems to not get near as much
The
attention,
dates. Yeah, yeah.
rightfully so. It's just kind of a rough time of year, especially for non-residents to
Sure.
be there.
Traveling.
Um, but and maybe even that last hunt in February, it's kind of like everyone is more inclined to be there in front of the last group of 200, so you probably don't have as many guys that are like, "Oh, I'll just hunt dead last
Sure.
after 900 tags or
Right.
800 tags have been issued. I'll be the very last of that." So there, that definitely tends to have a little bit better odds as that last hunt. But like I mentioned before, that's not a horrible time to be there. Like,
Right.
you could have a ram crawl out of a hole right then that he normally wouldn't have, especially because of the pressure.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. It's been pretty consistent across the board in those in on those hunts. They do give a lot of tags, and the other thing about it, and I've said this, maybe even to you in the past, like, if you're looking at Aoudad like a species to check the box on, and you kind of feel like you'd go guided anyways, like, by a mile, go to Texas.
Mm-hmm.
By a mile,
Sure.
go to Texas. But if you enjoy like that style of hunting, lots of glassing, lots of miles on your boots, the grind, all of that type of stuff, I mean, it's kind of bizarre, right? Like, it's that tag is only $360 for a non-resident. Like,
Yeah.
so if you're looking more of to getting into it, and or you just inherently you like that style of hunting, it's cool that it exists. Like, it's an off season, it can be an off season thing when nothing else is going on, and you're
Right.
out there busting your butt, and it's they're super rewarding. You walk up to a big giant 8 9 year old ram or older, it's one of the coolest things you'll do.
Oh
It's
yeah. Yeah,
They'll
yeah.
wreck you, man. That
They're
first
awesome.
time you see those shaps swaying underneath them and they're walking down, like, oh my god, like,
Yeah, oh yeah. No, they're
they'll
super
wreck
cool.
you.
Super
Yeah.
cool animal. They were highly underrated for a long
Oh
period
yeah.
of time. That you hit on something that's interesting though, Jordan. So tag prices in New Mexico for a non-resident. So what are they for ibex? They're how much are they?
1610.
Oryx.
Oryx is 1610, and then the Aoudad is 360.
So even within the fees, they're kind of bastardized a little
Yeah,
bit. Yeah, kind of
that's a
that's
great way
interesting.
of putting it. 100%. Yes.
Your elk and deer. What are they for
So
non-residents?
760 for a high quality or high demand elk tag, and 355 for the high quality or high demand deer, and then 270 for a standard deer, 585 I believe for the standard elk, which most of the time that's gonna translate more for kids. Like, the
Sure.
kids are set aside in that standard category.
And your sheep tags are how much for
Three
non-residents?
three thousand one hundred
3,000.
and
So they're
sixty.
they're
Yeah, it's
high.
one of the
So
most expensive sheep tags in the country. It might even be the most expensive.
right. And let's before we get into the other species, because this topic already came up. New Mexico is fairly unique in the sense that a non-resident has to post up all the mounts, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
so, I mean, I explain that, Jordan, and then I know you guys have a system to address that
Sure.
for people where it's relevant. So
Yep.
go through all that because it seems like in some ways, New Mexico is unique, and for some people, this affects their ability to draw or their want to draw. So go through all that real quick.
Sure. So, just like you said, in New Mexico, in order to get your name in the hat, you're going to want to submit a. You have to first purchase a hunting license and a habitat stamp. That ends up being $69 is the required upfront state license and stamp fees, and then it's $13 per species for non-residents to apply. The difference here versus most other states is that then you also have to submit the full payment of the permit at the time that you submit the application. So right now, if someone was to put in for all species, if you're going to buy, it's kind of like that train of thought is, if I'm buying a hunting license, I should put in for all species of interest. Well, that's a hard pill to swallow in New Mexico for a non-resident, or for some guys, because that means you've got what ends up being about like $200 in non-refundable fees between all of the application fees and the hunting license and whatnot. Then you've got another $8,163 due on top of that would get you in the hat. Now you're obviously going to get all of that money back um, if you're not successful on any of those, but you still got to tie up a little over 8 grand to be in on all of them. And again, I think there's even, that still works for guys. You got a credit card, put it in, no big deal. In the grand scheme of it, when you get the money back, it was a $13 raffle ticket,
Mm-hmm.
right? That being said, we
Which
do.
is highly motivating in the sense that people should apply for multiple
Yeah, for
species.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah, I
because in the
mean,
grand scheme of it, it's you're really not out of pocket much, and they're going to tie your money up for 45 days,
right,
roughly 50 days, something like that. But that being said, we help people apply. Like, that's the whole idea of the draw and what we
sure,
exist for. So we look for ways to help people do it more. And one of the products that we created is called the float service, and the float service. Helps people in Idaho for sheep, moose, and goat, and Wyoming for different things. But New Mexico is where it seems like people use it the most. And we kind of have two offerings with the float service. If you want like the full consultation and where to apply, and you don't have a guide and you want to be in the guided pool and all of those types of things, then you just simply get on our website and hit that apply for hunts today. You'll fill out your information, and a consultant's going to get on the phone and help you quarterback this thing from A to Z. And they have access to our float service, and that breaks down to like 9% of the cost of the tag. Is essentially, we're bankrolling that $8,000 for you for a fee
right.
on each selection. And then the newest thing that we just launched, actually just recently, like a couple days ago, in fact, that we're super excited about, is maybe more for the guys that really already know. They listen to your podcast all the time. They're going to the different places. They know the research, or they've got a contact that's like, put in here, put in here, put in here. And yet at the end of the day, the idea of tying up 8 grand or more, or if it's a family, I mean, God help us if it's a family of four,
Sure.
right? Now it's like $32,000 to get
Right.
everybody in. And so we created a new product called the Draw DIY, and essentially it's super simple. You go to the drawdiy.com, build an account with us, and then you will be asked your username and password for New Mexico. You jump into New Mexico Game and Fish's website, make all the selections that you want, all the different species, do it exactly like you normally would every year on New Mexico. Once you've got everything you would like in the shopping cart in New Mexico, you go back to the Draw DIY website, hit this big blue button that's on the screen, and a minute or two later, it'll populate a mirror image of whatever's in your shopping cart in New Mexico's account onto our website. We add our float fee to the state non-refundable fees. You pay for it, and within a few minutes, you'll see that your applications on New Mexico Game and Fish were actually submitted. So we have our service fee, but we actually put the 8,000 plus dollars on our credit card during that process. And then if you're successful drawing any of those tags, then now we just square up on whichever ones you drew. So
Yeah.
it's even if you're a guy that just knows exactly what they're doing, and but maybe the financial part of it is keeping you from applying now as a non-resident. So our float fee is $599. That covers as much or as little as you want in species selection. But in the grand scheme of it, for less money than applying just for elk alone, you can now apply for all the species in New Mexico. Obviously, none of it's refundable on that side of it, but at that moment, for less out of pocket than what it would cost just to apply for elk, now you've got 8 chances to win.
Right. Sure. Yeah, it's interesting, man, because me and you have talked about this before as a service, and it's not something that I use.
Right.
I haven't had the need for it, but and I've talked to you a lot about like, who would need the need for it, and the family option. I mean, it's like pretty. I mean, it's hard to post that much money up, but it
It's hard
also,
for
yeah,
even
yeah,
if you're in that tax bracket, tying up 30
oh,
grand
yeah, yeah, sure,
like is
yeah.
still like woo, that's a
Yeah,
lot.
for sure. And then
Yes.
there's young guys that are just starting out. You might not even have a
Yep.
credit card that you can put it on, so that makes sense for that. I didn't mention this to you, but it popped in my mind as you were talking about it. I had a situation, and I don't know if you've ever heard of this before, Jordan, but I had a situation just when I sold my business and my life changed a little bit. I had a personal credit card, and I pay my credit cards off like every month. Like I never hold a
Sure.
balance on them.
Yep.
But because of this transition in my life, my what I was paying off on the card like skyrocketed. Like my, within the, like tripled to what it was, and it
Yeah.
actually dinged my credit score like quite a
Sure.
bit. And that was just having the balance like mid-month, and I couldn't figure out like what it was. And then after like, I went through my credit report or whatever, and it's like, oh, increase like average daily balance on your
Oh yeah,
card.
sure.
I was like, what the heck? Like to me, that doesn't make sense. I pay them off all the time. You know what I mean? Like I pay them
But
off
they
regardless
they
of it.
were watching and didn't like it that all of a sudden
Yeah,
normal, 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 and then this month, boom,
yeah,
this
yeah. Which
huge.
makes sense. Which from their
Sure.
perspective is, as a
Yep.
credit agency or whatever. But I just thought that was kind of interesting. It might be relevant within this discussion. I have no idea for people, but I thought that was kind of an interesting thing that I observed. But
No, we
cool.
found it. I mean, like we said, and you said, like, we know, like, it definitely isn't for everybody. Like, that product, to your point, we work with lots and lots that don't need it for sure.
Hmm.
But it is, it's interesting to work with the state of New Mexico and to know that, like, with all the, I mean, almost 200,000 applications that are submitted annually in the state of New Mexico, the the average is 1.4 applications per people, and I don't think it's because they only want to hunt elk. I
Yeah.
think that it's because they that big upfront cost is a bear, and especially for families. And we hope that things like again, whether if you want the full kind of Monty and you need a coach all the way through it, great. Like call us, get a hold
Sure.
of us, and we'll help you all the way through. And we do have a float service within the draw. But if you're not that guy, if you know exactly what you want and like, how you're going to do it and why you're doing it, the draw DIY can be at 2 in the morning. You know.
Yeah, you could just do it. Yeah, it's just a way. It's basically a way to get a little financing for
Yep.
posting it
Exactly.
up. And yeah, no, I get it, man. And I guess back to the original point in there, Jordan. Like to me, man, as a non-resident, to be applying for elk or maybe you're applying for elk and antelope or whatever, not to pay $13 to apply for Oryx is like insane. I,
Right.
I
The
know I
only
just
reason you don't is because you've never hunted Oryx before and you don't know what you're missing.
yeah, or it's that you don't want to post up the 2 grand,
Yeah,
which
exactly. Or
yeah,
you're financially constrained. It's like, and I mean, we see it all the time. Like, hell, I've had this conversation in my own house where my wife like sees this big
yeah.
charge
I
on the
think that's
card,
I
and
think
she's
that's
like,
part of the problem.
yeah, she's like,
Yeah.
what is this? And
Yeah.
like, with something like the draw DIY, like she never sees that. Like, it's like
It might be
totally.
worth the fee
Yeah,
just
it's
to
just like
avoid the
kidding. Like, I'm
conversation.
gonna avoid a fight by she's never gonna see that big kid,
Yeah.
and yeah, like so it's. I mean, like I said, I've had that in my own house where
Sure.
it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like Wyoming, like back when we were trying for sheep, moose, goat, bison, all of that.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's
when that
brutal.
one hit every year, my wife's like, "Are you kidding me right
Yeah.
now?"
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. No,
uh,
it's
we're
it.
probably going to get it all back. I hope I don't get it all back though. Like I
Yeah.
hope
Yeah.
they keep a little bit of it, so which never happens. But if they did, it'd be great.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. It's funny, man. So actually, when I moved from Colorado, it's so ironic, Jordan, but I'd been a Colorado resident for whatever, a long time. And then the first year that I became a non-resident, I drew a goat tag and a moose tag
Oh my
as a
gosh.
non-resident, and it slammed me on the
Oh
tags,
yeah.
and I remember because I was spoiled over the years, like applying for all these tags within Colorado with like all the resident fees, and I just remember seeing those, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's a little more, that's more than I'm used to.
Well, dude, I'll tell you that I don't know if we've ever talked about it. It's funny that you say that exact same thing because something else worth mentioning, like it's a promotion that we're doing this year on a product that we actually launched last year, is we call it tag insurance. And
Oh, okay.
essentially, so it's free this year for everyone who's in our program. But uh, if you draw a tag that has a once in a lifetime status associated with it, and or because there are places that there's more of like a waiting period, it's not necessarily once in a lifetime. If it's a sheep or a moose or a goat or a bison in the lower 48, it
Yeah.
it counts in there. Like the whole idea is that, to your point, that happens. Like
Oh, yeah.
guys draw these like ultra expensive tags that they were not expecting to draw at all,
Yeah.
because it's like a less than 1% chance, and it's a shell shock. You're like, oh crap. And so that's what our tag insurance is. It's $100 a year normally. This year it's free. That if you do draw one of those, we actually pay the tag for you.
Oh, I
um,
got you. It's like a yeah, yeah. So it's a way to cover it. No, that's kind of interesting, man. Guys, biltong. Okay, I have been obsessed with this stuff for 3 or 4 years. Ever since I got on a keto, carnivore, paleo-esque type of diet, I've had a hard time finding healthy snacks. Biltong is a great option, particularly the slabs that have this fat on the side. That's where your energy is if you're a fat burner like me. Super simple ingredients in this, guys. Literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ingredients. Compare that to your gas station jerky. A great snack in the backcountry or just day to day. Biltong Depot is a huge supporter of my content. Go to their website, biltongdepot.com. Use my discount code CLIFFG, CLIFFG for 15% off at checkout and to support this content. Thanks, guys. I always thought, this is another topic that I could get crazy into, Jordan. I always contemplated this idea of like a financing company that financed guys' hunts. And I know this is
right.
it's gonna sound crazy because people are like, well, Cliff, you're basically talking about, you know, people who are hunters being irresponsible with how they spend money. But the problem is that I don't really think there's a component of it that's not that, man, because if you really look at these draws, like I used to look at the preference point or the hybrid draws for sheep and goats in Colorado, and I would
Right.
have these hunters call me, and they would have 25 preference points. And they would say, okay, Cliff, I'm going to start applying for the hunt this year.
Oh
And
God.
I'm like, man, you haven't been applying for the
Isn't that
hunt?
the I've have been on
And
similar, and you're just like sick to your stomach
well,
for
and
them because
some guys will say, "Well, I knew I wanted to go guided, and then the tag price, I just didn't have the money to do the hunt." It's like,
right.
well, dude, you missed out on the biggest chunk of probability that you were actually going to draw that tag in your
Because your
life.
odds are actually getting worse as mature as these
Yeah,
point systems are now, and the influx of new people. Like
right,
in the first 10 years, you were going up against 1,000 guys. Now you're going up against 5,000 guys.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
it's
Yeah,
the more mature the system gets, the less chance the guys at the top actually have
yeah, yeah.
when you're dealing with micros, with very few tags.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
No, totally, man. And then I used to also think of it in the context, Jordan, of like, I was guiding a lot of mountain goat hunts over the years. And unfortunately, it's a hard hunt for older guys.
Oh yeah.
And then I was going to British Columbia a lot, and it's the same deal because of the economic components of it. I was booking a bunch of goat hunters and bear hunters up there, so I'd go up there with guys. And what I noticed is that again, it's older guys, and I kept thinking to myself, like, man, how could you make it so you could finance these trips for younger guys and, still get paid? You know what I mean?
Oh no, for sure.
So it's an idea for somebody.
Because you're in the same boat. We've all been there. That guided a lot. Like you, like the 1 out of 10 that did show up that was like in his mid 30s and like truly got himself ready. You're like,
Yeah.
dude, we are gonna kill a
Oh yeah.
stud. Like we're
Sure.
going and we're gonna hunt our butts off and it's gonna be great. Whereas you're when it's the normal guy, you're very cautious about like what you're doing every day
Yeah.
because you could easily burn a dude down in 3 days and be done, even though you haven't really got to even get started yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's it's a real thing. We've even looked at that, like that side of it is, I mean, that's like say the draw, like I mean, it's in our mission statement, it's in our identity is just like get people hunting more.
Hmm.
Period. And I'm telling you right now, we get the picture of the dude from the Midwest, the East Coast that's got a raghorn 3x4 bull elk
Sure.
in Montana or Colorado or wherever, or hell, Utah, New Mexico, it doesn't matter. And he's just like out of his mind. Like
Yeah. Of
he
course.
think like it's this idea that a thing that he thought maybe wasn't even doable. It was so foreign to him, he couldn't believe it. And we get the ones of the guy with a 390 bull and a
Sure.
220 elk, and he's equally as excited and whatnot. But it's the truth, they're equally excited because and we found that like to each their own, and our goal isn't to worry about some of those details as much as like what is your individual goal, and then let us show you how to do it. And some are easier to accomplish than others, like
Right.
yeah,
Yep.
and it does, and with just a little bit of coaching and someone taking you by the hand, just like anything in life, like you can, there's, you take the mystery and the anxiety out of it, and all of a sudden there you are doing it, and doing things you never thought you could.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you, man. Totally. Let's back to the draw. Let's
Yep.
talk elk.
Okay. So right now we're dealing with a little bit of like we're right on the front end of something that I would say is fairly normal in New Mexico and the Southwest, and we seem to be faring better than say like Utah and Nevada and Arizona right now. But the drought is definitely something to be watching closely. Like currently, we've got some pretty extreme conditions, like in Texas, right next door, that haven't really crept up into New Mexico as dramatically, and yet we're still in kind of some level of drought or abnormal, abnormally dry in pretty large areas of the state. And God willing, oddly enough, in the last 2 years, we have had that kind of middle spring moisture that's shown up, which is not normal for us. So we're kind of fingers crossed for that. Again, if it does happen, uh, I think we're going to be kind of posting up for a pretty normal year. If we don't get the moisture until like the monsoon season in July, I think that there could be a little bit of a cause and effect to antler growth and antler density and things of that nature. But like me and you have talked before about this as well, like New Mexico, being that there is no point system, and it's not like you're looking at burning X number of points in a lot of these other states. Like when the drought is kind of affecting other places, New Mexico is kind of your ace in the hole because there isn't as much at risk. Like there isn't as much at stake to still have a hunt and a good hunt to look forward to. But you didn't burn 2 decades worth of
Right.
points to make that opportunity happen. But overall, even like I say, Colorado's looking pretty strong right now. New Mexico is a step behind it, but it's and and we always are. It's New Mexico, right? We're always a little bit dry. It's
Yeah.
just something. It's happening a little bit this time of year where we're watching it closely and hoping that maybe a little bit more weather shows up before too long. To get us into more of a strong year versus what I would say is looking like a normal year. And so elk, I'm excited about. I think just your kind of your classic stuff. Like we break elk down into three categories in New Mexico. We have the core, which is like the Gila and the Sacramento Mountains, like high elk density, historically a good age class. And there and like so who wouldn't want to go there, right? So that therefore those are the worst odds in the state. That's where everyone
Yeah.
wants to go. It's because it's lots of elk and good age class. The if guys are looking for the best, then oftentimes that's where you should be focused is the Gila and the Sacramentos. If you're looking outside of the box a little bit, the second kind of area of New Mexico, we call it the Northern Triangle, and essentially it's an upside down triangle. Santa Fe kind of being the point, and then kind of a runner towards Chama and a runner towards Raton. That whole Northern Triangle is the highest elk density in the state. So they issue a lot more tags in those units than they do on the Gila or the Sacramento because there's a ton more opportunity. Um, and comparing it like apples to apples, it's still not a fraction of how many guys you'd run into like on an over the counter hunt in Colorado, right?
Right.
It's a lot more than maybe other places in the state, but it's not like that at all. It's just that I think those are some of the funnest elk hunts in the state. It's just that if you see a legit 280 to 310 6x6 bull opening morning at first light, like in
It's a good one.
almost all of those units, like that's a bull you should get very serious about killing. Like that's what you're there for. You're not going to run into that 350 plus kind of bull almost ever
Right.
up there. It's not entirely exclusive. You could have a giant anywhere, but they're overall those are just really fun elk hunts with good success rates. Hard to kill a giant. And then
Right.
the third place in New Mexico is what we call the fringe units. And the fringe units are just desert units that don't have very many elk period in them. It's not very classic habitat, low density, but the state doesn't issue very many tags in those units as a general rule. And so for how horrible the elk hunting is in the fringe units, you do see some really big bulls come out of those fringe units on in one place or the other every year. And so people chasing odds, like if you have a stack of elk antlers in your garage, you can't run and jump over, like, and you're looking for a giant, but you want better odds, like the fringe units are places that a guy should be looking, those low elevation desert units, to have a chance at a bigger bull, even though you may go a day or two in those places without even seeing an elk. If you're just looking for a good time and want to have a really good, fun elk hunt, that Northern Triangle um, is where you should focus. And if you're just not interested in going unless it's the very best, then you probably should be focused on the Gila or the Sacramentos.
Gotcha. Jordan, I had a question. So I had you on my membership group. I don't know, like week or so ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, and
Yep.
we got through a bunch of questions. But I brought over a question from that group that I didn't get answered, and it's
Sure.
along the lines here. I actually had an individual, Philip. He asked me what like strategy wise or maybe expectation wise, what's the difference? I'm assuming, and everybody uses, Colorado hunting for like relative comparison, but I'm assuming that upper triangle you're talking about from a
Mhm.
tactic standpoint, strategy standpoint, it's going to be pretty similar to Colorado,
Yeah,
right? It's similar
you took,
terrain.
yep,
And
you've took the
yep,
words out of my mouth. We compare it the same as well. It's just like going to Colorado for an elk hunt with about 30% of the amount of hunters that you're going to
yeah, I
run
gotcha.
into.
Yep,
Yep. And some of those units are a little more physical than others, but I guess the same could be said in Colorado too, right?
sure.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
just,
yeah.
but it's a very much an extension of all of that in Colorado, but with in a little bit more of a controlled environment. It's not just
Right.
a free for all. Yep.
Now, if I'm used to hunting Colorado, or that Chama area or whatever, like something that's like that, and I draw a tag that's in the Gila or in the Carson or something like that, what's gonna be like? What are the big differences if I've never hunted that kind of country?
I would say for the most part, like if you've never hunted just the endless miles of ponderosas,
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna catch you off guard. Like you're on these big plateaus, and the idea of like setting up and glassing big canyons and things like that to locate animals, and then move in and pick which one you're going to move in on and everything like that. Not to say that there isn't scenarios where that's possible, but as a general rule, it is a very different style of hunting like that. It's not, the terrain isn't broken enough to lend itself to that. You just end up in miles of ponderosas and trees, and I think that with valleys and stuff in the middle of them
Sure.
and whatnot, but the that catches guys off guard. They're not used. If you haven't ever hunted like that in like Arizona or New Mexico or whatever, that there is a bit of a learning curve to being successful, and I do think it catches guys off guard a little bit when they draw, say, some serious tag like a 16A or a 16D, and if they roll in there day one and they've never hunted in those kind of terrain, like you've got a really amazing tag, but like it's not. And I also would say that as a general rule, the elk density isn't what it is
Yeah.
in those places. Like you're not going to see tons and tons of animals. It's just not how it is in there. There's plenty of animals, but I think part of it is the terrain that you're hunting, and part of it is just the fact that there isn't as many animals that
Yeah. So
it
you
kind
got
of
to just be
compounds.
you probably got to be way more efficient with your time to cover ground and find elk before you
Yeah,
really start hunting.
and like instead of entirely leaning on your glass, right? Like you're looking for tracks on the
I
road.
gotcha, sure.
You're walking up to every water source to see what's going on. You're trying to identify that there are animals in the area in other means than just simply setting on your 15s and pounding it away.
Yeah,
Because then once you find those where there is some animal density, now you can really start breaking it down and start looking at subtle terrain features
sure.
and draws and things of that nature to kind of help isolate where I think so many of us. I grew up in Utah, so for me, I'm even like, to answer your question, I'm leaning back on just some of the stuff that I went through when I first got down here, and the next thing you know, I'm guiding guys out in this stuff
Sure, and it's
that
different.
was very different from me growing up in the aspens and the oak brush and stuff like that.
Right, right. It's particularly different if you don't have any like historical knowledge of the region. Like you don't know where to start, like the
Yeah,
spots that
exactly.
hold elk. Yeah, it's funny, Jordan. It kind of sounds like it's a little bit analogous to. I used to take some bear hunters in the spring, like way up into Prince George, British Columbia. So up, not, like kind of terrain that people don't really associate with British Columbia. It's actually pretty mild, and it's all kind of rolling, and it's all
Right.
been logged like heavy. There's roads all over it,
Oh,
and
sure.
a lot of times people when they think about spring bear hunting, and it's all sold as like spot and stock hunts, they think that the first day you're just gonna go sit on like snow slides and glass for bears. or you're gonna find like clear cuts and sit in glass for bears. But the first days, all you do is you jump in that truck and you just haul ass until you find bear shit on the road, and then you start glassing because
Sure.
you could drive 200 miles of barren country, and then you find like, okay, there's bear shit here. Now we're gonna start glassing and try to find
Sure.
these
We do it
things.
on we do the same thing on off-range Oryx hunting.
Oh,
Just
okay.
it's weird that those Oryx, they like to crap on the road.
Oh,
Like
okay.
it's like a, I don't know, they when they're crossing fences and when they cross roads, they like
Gets them
to
going,
mark
sure.
it or something. And same idea, like just drive mindlessly almost. And we're looking left and right and whatever, but truly, like, but I'm stopping on a
Yeah,
pile of
yeah.
crap and I'm getting out, and I'm glad. And it's because there's been multiple times over the years where like I'm looking and looking and nothing, and I'll get in the truck bed and look, and it's like, oh, like he's
Yeah,
right
yeah,
there.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just needed just 5 more feet of elevation, and now I've got him, and now we're hunting. But yeah, it's that's probably the biggest thing is if you haven't done that type of it, just again think outside the box. Don't completely just rely on your glass. Do in lots of things to just help you find where there are animals, so that now you can start breaking smaller areas down of natural drainages and water
Sure.
sources and things of that nature. And it'll work. You can be successful.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess it all comes down to that phrase you always hear, right? Like 95% of the animals are in 5% of the country,
Yeah,
right?
they're
Or the
all,
terrain or whatever.
and to your point, like there's always a learning curve no matter where you go. And if you're like me, like I kind of enjoy that. I like going into a place net new and
Sure.
trying to figure it out and break it down. But you also, it's hard now, right? Tags are expensive, time is hard to find and all of that. And so you want to do the best that you can, right, when you get there and tear into it. But it is they're always where they're always at, and they're never where they're never at.
Yeah, that's
Like
right.
like
That's
that's
right, man.
yeah.
No, for sure. Good deal. So we covered elk. Let's finish up with oryx, man.
Oryx is definitely currently. It's not always been like this, but currently, I would argue, other than our sheep as a general rule, like our Oryx is our shining diamond. Like it's doing so good right now. There's so many ways to participate in the Oryx hunting. From if you just want the truly once in a lifetime experience, that's on White Sands Missile Range. It doesn't matter whether it's the Stallion Range or the Rhodes Canyon, or whether it's in October or it's in February. Like every time you go out there, you're going to see tons of animals. You're going to have the chance to be successful on a for most people will have a chance to be successful on a mature animal, and they're truly incredible opportunities. If you've done that before and or you're looking for a little bit better odds, we lean on the off range hunts a lot for these guys that just want a better crack at it. It's completely day and night from an on range once in a lifetime experience. I tell guys most of the time, if you'll commit 5 days, kind of like you would for most of your deer or elk hunting trips, then in that time period you should see somewhere, currently you should see between 15 and 30 animals in that 5 day period. And I've had times where that means on day 4 I run into a herd of 15.
Right.
Usually it's twos and threes and singles, and maybe a little herd of 8 or 9 or something like that, that's spread out across the 5 day period. They're very skittish. They get hunted all 365 days a year. The off-range tags don't hunt April and May, but there is some sort of hunt for oryx
Right.
365 days a year. um, and so it's very rewarding. It's super fun, and it can be an off-season hunt if you want it to be. If you're chasing better odds, it tends to be like the September, October, November, when everybody wants to be deer and elk hunting. Um, Give a guy a little bit better crack at it. Not as many people are trying to draw during those time frames. And then all the way down to, there's the McGregor range, which is very similar to a hunting white sands, except it doesn't have a once in a lifetime status associated with it. Not nearly as many animals on McGregor, but it's a military base, pretty controlled. Um, Great Oryx hunt. You're going to see plenty of animals in that 2 day period that hunt takes place, and then the private land over the counter stuff, which we've actually been able. We've got some really cool opportunities on that if guys are just sick of waiting for their odds in the
Sure.
draw and they just decide. I mean, you're paying a little bit of a premium to just bypass the whole draw process, but you're on a 60,000 acre private land ranch with plenty of oryx on it. It's and they get hunted constantly, so you bust your butt out there.
Sure.
But um,
What,
that's a
what's like what's the general range of what those hunts cost, Jordan?
So, like, if you were going to go fully guided meals and lodging on the once in a lifetime hunt right now, you're gonna see guys ranging from about 3.5 to $4,500 for that 2.5 day period. If you're doing a 5 day meals and lodging um, off range hunt, you're going to probably be at about 6,500, 7 grand,
Yep.
65 to 7,500, somewhere in there. And then the private land stuff is more like right now we're selling those at 8,500 for a 2-on-1 or 10,000 flat for a 1-on-1. And then the other one, like this will be a good talking point. We've talked about it before, Cliff, is if guys want to be in the guided pool in New Mexico, the legalities around that is you only have to be with the guide for 2 days.
Oh, right.
And so an off-range oryx hunt is a month long, right?
Oh,
So
sure.
if there ever was a time where if you even if you're not necessarily inclined for going guided, you can leverage the guided pool, get in, draw the tag, pay a guide for 2 days. That's running typically about $1,600 to $2,000, depending on who you're working with, to do the 2 day guide deal, and then you have
Right.
the rest of the month that you're legal to go and hunt. So we definitely have been. We do a bunch of those as well as guys that are just leveraging that guided pool to get the tag. They don't particularly need or want a guide, but they'll hunt with a guide for 2 days to suffice the legalities,
Sure.
and then away they go. So that's a pretty cost effective way too.
Is
And
there
the
a
nice thing
pretty
with our go
is there a
ahead.
pretty good like differential in the draw odds versus the off range guided and non guided?
Yeah, it is. I mean, all of them suck, right?
Yeah,
But
sure. Yeah,
if
yeah,
there
yeah.
was one that does stand out, it does seem like that off-range Oryx, like will bump you from like a two to like 1.5 to 2.5% odds, clear up into again, like if we're especially if we're talking September, October, November,
Right.
oftentimes that could put you clear into like a 10 to 15%
Oh, okay.
odds.
Yeah. So
Yeah, so
it's big difference.
I've had my butt kicked on 10% odds more times than I can count,
Yeah, yeah,
but
sure.
in our game, like 10%
Yeah, it's
starts
good.
to be a pretty legitimate roll of the dice.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. But even the private land that you quoted, like $8,000 to $10,000, that seems, I've only hunted oryx once, but that seems like a pretty reasonable hunt, Jordan. I know it's a lot of money for people,
right.
but
It
dude,
it
a
is a lot of
a a,
money.
a mid-level elk hunt costs
We're at
that.
for sure, and and that's I think why they're priced the way they are. It's like yeah, you're paying a premium to bypass that draw process, but it's not outrageous,
No,
and it's very much the same hunt. I mean, it's 60,000 acres. That's pretty much bordering White Sands Missile Range.
sure,
Like they have their own herd that just it has been there forever, and they manage
right.
them and hunt them and it's cool. I'm super geeked about it. Like we're super happy we've got them, and we're doing more all the time, and it's fun. But yeah, and but if it's a guy on a budget, like, and you really want to, like, if it's a bucket list type of item, you should really consider getting with us and getting into the guided pool. I mean, that's the beautiful part about working with the draw and the guided pool is you're never married to an outfitter specifically. You don't even have to go with one of our outfitters. If you just want to be in the guided pool, we don't charge extra for it. You call us up or go to the .com and get your information to us and a consultant will get you on the phone. You say yes or no to being guided. We work with an outfitter that is permitted everywhere in the whole state, so we can apply. I mean, this transcends even to the elk stuff, right? Like instead of just being married to where one outfitter or the other says, "Hey, this is where I hunt." Now you're being aggressive with the odds wherever you find them,
Sure.
because you're with us, you're legal, you're in the guided pool, and then once the tag is in hand, now we're as involved as you want us to be in helping you go with someone. Um, but at the end of the day, we'll fill out a transfer document, and you go with anyone who's a legally licensed outfitter in New
Right.
Mexico. We fill out a transfer document, and you're that's a hard one with the guided pool, is you're married to whoever you decide to use unless you're working with us.
Yeah, I got you.
And the idea that the right guy, even on the elk side of things, it was in the Gila, that's also the right guy in the Sacramentos, or the right guy in the Northern Triangle,
Right.
is almost
Doesn't make
impossible that that
sense.
would be
Yeah,
the
yeah.
same
Sure.
guy. And then you start transcending into different species, and it's like, oh, is he really the
Right.
right guy? And but it's the one outfitter code that you have, so you're kind of married to it. With us, you're not. Like, you get
Sure.
in, we apply very aggressively all over the, however it makes the most sense, and then once the tag is in hand, we start talking about who we're actually going to go with.
Right.
Just like any other state when you draw a tag.
Sure. No, I hear you. Nice, man. No, it's a good bonus to be able to do that, for
Yeah,
sure. Jordan, we miss anything, man? Or we cover it?
I
We
think we
didn't we
did. The
didn't
only
talk we
thing we
didn't
didn't,
talk deer, but
I was gonna
deer's
say, we
like
didn't talk deer, we didn't talk antelope. Coos deer. I mean, deer doesn't need to be talked about, right? Deer hunting in New Mexico is rough as a general rule. Like, if you've never mule deer hunted ever before, go to Colorado. Don't come to New
yeah,
Mexico.
yeah. If you got
Like,
a
I'm
lot of
gonna have
money,
some
go.
guys.
If you got a lot of money, go hunt the Hickory or something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
Coos deer hunting, on the other hand, the only thing I would say to that is, like, it's that species is gaining popularity as well
Okay.
right now, right? And we're hearing guys talk about, maybe I'm gonna go ahead and burn my Arizona points and just like give up on the strip or the kaibab or whatever the original goal was, and I'm just gonna go coos deer hunting. I'm not totally against that, and we should maybe jump on another podcast and really break down like some theory around their train of thought there. But as a general rule, for two reasons, New Mexico makes way more sense to roll the dice on a coos deer hunt. We have phenomenal coos deer hunting in every unit that they're offered in. You could kill a book deer in every unit in New
Okay.
Mexico that has coos deer in it. And second of all, again, you're not burning points to do that experience. And then and last but not least, like, you're gonna go scratch that itch, and then at the end of it, if you did decide you wanted to burn points in Arizona or something, so be it. That's fine. But at least you didn't, like, go try it out with a dozen points that you've built up in Arizona.
Right.
So it's the Coos deer hunting is probably the only piece of the deer hunting worth mentioning. Is it's
Gotcha.
like, this is it's really good.
Yeah, I
And
got you.
don't
It's worth going
don't
for.
burn your Arizona points to go Coos deer hunting.
Yeah, yeah.
Not
I
yet.
got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. Good to know. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, Jordan.
No, you
Yeah, where can people, keep up to date with you, your website, all that stuff?
Sure. So you can check us out on thedraw.com. You can check out our new website, thedrawdiy.com, with that float service there. And then Instagram's definitely our kind of hot one, and our handle there is at We Are The Draw there. So,
Cool.
yep,
Awesome,
if
man. Thanks,
I
dude.
appreciate it. Yeah, they're always fun. And then I'm going to see you
Yeah,
Friday.
yeah. Yep, I'll be at the Hunt Expo on Friday, and I'm gonna try to get this podcast out before that, Jordan.
Cool.
So people, so everybody out there, if you're listening to this, if it's Friday morning, me and Jordan will both be at the Hunt Expo, right?
Oh, I'm gonna be there. Oh yeah, I can't. It's embarrassing how much I look forward to that weekend every year. Like, it shouldn't matter as much, but it does. I thoroughly can't wait for it.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's funny, man, because I'm very like, uh, there's pros and cons on trade show stuff, and going to them. But I think some people around me, like viewers and that sort of thing, they think that sometimes I'm negative on them. But if you haven't been to it, like if you haven't been to the
Yeah, if
Western
you
Hunt
haven't done it,
Expo, you can't like me crappy on it because like sometimes I'm pretty introverted, Jordan, so like it's real
sure.
exhausting for me to go to them. Like that's it. But whenever I hear somebody who's like, "Oh yeah, I don't like people. I would never go to the trade show." I'm like, "Oh, you've never been to it. Like you got to
Yeah,
go. Like
you
it,
got to
like
go.
you
You got to
yeah, you
see it.
have to go to it. It'll
No,
blow
it's
your
so
mind. You
yeah,
know what I
it's
mean?
fun, and it's the Salt Lake has really kind of morphed over the last 15, 18 years, whatever it's been too. It was so isolated to just like hunters selling hunts and
Sure.
fishing trips and all of that to now it is a bit of like a techie gear
Oh
show
yeah.
too, right? So you
Yeah.
get to see some like really cool stuff that's coming out, which is really a fun part. And then I'm I grew up in Utah, so I get to go see like a bunch of
Yeah, friends and old friends and
family, and
people.
then I get to see a bunch of the guys I went to Iraq with. Like it's like my one time a year that I'm
Sure.
like I'm back for
Yeah,
a
yeah,
minute,
yeah.
and I don't have any kids with me right now, so we're
Yep.
doing this. Yeah,
Cool.
it's a good time.
Awesome, man. Well, I'll see you there, dude. Thanks for coming on. Of
Thank you for having me, Cliff.
course,
Awesome.
man.
All right, buddy. We'll see you.
If you enjoyed this content, do me a huge favor. Subscribe on whatever platform you consume it on. Spotify, Apple, YouTube, whatever works for you guys. Everything else is on my website, pursuitwithcliff.com. Go there and it's going to be very apparent to you that I work my ass off just to not have a real job. All the hunts I guide, all the seminars I put on, all the unique experiences I offer, and the membership site, all the details are there.